Organizations have to grow, period. But how they grow changes over their lifespan. Companies and nonprofits don't operate in a vacuum. Competitors emerge, economies change, founders who put their heart and soul into creating companies decide they might want to do other things. Their kids might want to get involved too. Customers and beneficiaries also change. At profit and nonprofit organizations, you don't assume your audience will stay loyal forever. Technology is changing the way many organizations operate overnight. So that's why we say every organization, no matter how successful, hits a fork in the road. To keep growing, some companies will decide to start selling stock to the public, known as an IPO, or to new private investors, which is known as a private placement. Selling stock, which means selling ownership in the company, provides money for a variety of purposes. Other companies might see a competitive challenge. They might decide to expand product lines or literally buy competing firms that can provide more market share. In fact, you might see companies do a stock offering, so they'll have money to do this. And finally, you'll see some company owners making the decision to exit their business for a number of reasons. Competition is getting too tough and they don't want to do any of the options we just mentioned. The original owners want to retire and hand the business over to their family or their employees. Or maybe there's an offer on the table from another company that's just too good to refuse. So let's talk in a bit more detail about choosing a path. We mentioned IPOs a moment ago. If you know anything about initial public offerings, you might find yourself asking, wait, an IPO doesn't sound like an ending. Well, it certainly doesn't mean an end to the business, but it certainly means an end to the way the business has operated until that point. An IPO is a financing option that raises money from people like you and me and bigger institutions like mutual funds and corporate investors. Even though the founders may stay at the helm, all of these new owners will want a bigger say in the way the new public firm is run. Companies that go public offer shares through a public stock exchange like the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. The advantages? As we've said before, IPOs allow companies to raise big piles of cash to grow or diversify their business, and they also allow the original owners a big return on all their hard work. But companies that go public need to be prepared for some big changes that might be seen as disadvantages. If the founders stay in charge, they'll now have to answer to complete strangers about their performance. They'll have to add independent board members to critique their decisions because that's the law. Also, being a public company is more expensive. Managers have to invest in auditors, regulatory compliance, and communications that keep all shareholders and business media informed. Business owners need to decide whether that big payday is worth giving up a significant amount of control. For many business owners, it is. But another option is expansion through diversification. All companies go through good times and bad, but at some point a company's growth will slow down or plateau. Perhaps they've saturated the market with their leading product and demand is slowing, or maybe competitors are starting to overtake them. It's clearly time to diversify, and there are two big ways for a company to do it. The first comes through internally funded research and development. Take Apple and the creation of the iPod, an invention that revolutionized the music business and set the stage for the company's move into smartphones. The iPod transformed the company, so R&D is one way companies diversify. The second way is something we've already touched on, expansion and acquisition. Say you own a company but see a competitor with a better mousetrap. That's where public offerings and other investment strategies come in. Every company takes their own unique path toward the middle and end stage of their business, and that's the last stage of a company's life cycle, the exit or harvest stage, when we're talking about how founders leave the business either closing its doors or passing it on to the next generation. Now, let's take a closer look at that last stage. In business and in personal finance, you'll hear the term exit planning. That's actually a useful term to learn right now while you're in school because it's a smart way to think about life. People always seem to dream about how they'll start a career or business, but don't think as much about how they want it to end. Smart business people think about endings all the time because it helps them plan for a range of things that can happen, both good and bad. So knowing the degree of personal and financial success you want out of a career or a business makes a lot of sense. And the earlier you think about it, the better. Think about a company that's successfully gone through its own growth stage and settled into a pattern of profitability. Keep in mind that this doesn't always mean a company that's 20 or 30 years old. In high-tech industries, you may see a company reach this point much earlier. As the owner, you may decide to make a lifestyle change and sell to a new owner. You may want to transition out slowly and transfer the company to employee ownership. On the negative side, maybe your efforts to diversify fell short, and maybe you need to sell because long-term you don't feel you'll be able to stay in business. However you get there, you're now writing the end chapter of your business. Many people find this final stage of a company's life sad, but businesses always do one of two things: they transition or they end. Remember Kongo Gumi, the 1400-year-old Japanese company I mentioned earlier? Despite its long history, it too had its own transition to a new owner in 2006. So now you're finished with your business basics training. Remember the questions we mentioned at the very start of the series? Take another look at them and see how well you do. Whether you're preparing for your first job or your first startup company, we hope what you've learned here is the start of great things. Good luck, and thanks for watching.